Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Twitter space. Today, we'll be discussing all things ISTE 2022. If you're not familiar with ISTE, it is one of the world's most influential education events. It's where educators and education leaders gather to engage in hands-on learning, share best practices, and hear from the brightest minds from the world of education and beyond. So we are very excited to be attending this year. It is at the end of June in New Orleans. So we're super, super excited to be joining the conference. So let me go ahead and add our speakers in. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by Dene Gainey and John Pauls. They were both contestants in our EdTech Karaoke Virtual this past January, and I'm very excited to get into it with them. So I added Dene. Let me go ahead and add John as well. Okay, perfect. John, I think you are a speaker. You may be muted.
Hi there.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Okay, perfect. John, I think you are a speaker. You may be muted.
Hi there.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let me see if Dean was able to get the invite as well. Dean, you should be able to accept the invite. Let me see. Okay, so while we're working on that, John, if you don't mind, um, just introducing yourself and just sharing a little bit of your background.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. My name is John Pauls, and I am from Jacksonville, Florida. During my daytime job, I'm actually an instructional designer and adjunct professor at Jacksonville University, so I get to help create engaging online learning content for undergrad and graduate students. I also work with a grant in Jacksonville, Florida known as Ultra, where we focus on bringing accessibility to students using gamification strategies, so that's always fun. And I am really passionate about accessibility, singing, and just having a fun time with ed tech. So that's me in a very brief bio.
I love that. That's great. That's great. And I think, Dean, we got you as a speaker. Would you mind introducing yourself, just sharing a little bit of your background as well?
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me now?
Hello. Yes.
So my name is Dean. Of course, yes, I'm from the state of Florida. 17 years in the classroom. I am so excited to be here. Certainly excited to be here. Singer, of course, teacher, educator, veteran, and the list goes on. And I am also an author, if I didn't mention that. So glad to be here.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm very excited to get into this topic with both of you. And but while we start, I did kind of give a little background on ISTE. So I just wanted to ask you both, are you both attending or have you attended ISTE in the past?
I am for sure attending. This will be my first time attending in person. I
Exciting.
presented when it was virtual, and so this is actually the first conference I'm going to since FETC right before the pandemic. So I am
Okay,
super
got
pumped.
it. Very exciting.
I have had the great fortune of attending ISTE in person in 2018. It was an exciting time. Definitely was my first as well then, and I actually kind of missed that experience.
Definitely. And Dean, are you attending this well?
I will not be attending in person this
Okay.
year, but I will be attending on a virtual space.
Perfect. Great. Well, John, we're very excited to work with you and see you. And Dean, hopefully we do get to meet in person one day, but I'm sure you'll be able to still get everything virtual that you can through ISTE. So since John, you mentioned you went to FEDC, and Dean, you're a veteran ISTE goer. Do you guys have any tips for first time ISTE goers or just conference goers in general?
I would say, if I could, one of the things that I experienced in 2018 was just how overwhelming ISTE was, and I don't know how this year's experience will be compared to 2018. But one thing was it was hard to get everywhere you wanted to be.
Okay.
Sometimes things were really spread out, and so you had to kind of go from one side of the convention center to the other one. And so I would say just kind of plan your time and really don't expect to make it to everything. But I think it's one of the highlights is what happens in the hallways, what happens in the open spaces that are not necessarily sessions. You almost got that much more from those experiences than you did in the actual sessions as well, because you're interacting with people regardless of whether you're in the session or not.
That's a good point. And I think with anything, it's always like what you put into it as well is what you'll get out of it.
Yeah, and I when I went to FETC, and I know it was from my understanding of students who had gone to both, they were telling me about just how massive ISTE is, and just how there's so many people, there's so many sessions, and
Mm-hmm.
so much to learn. And so I try to just step into that space and say, what am I passionate about? What is going to excite me? And then just build those connections with people, and understand you're not going to get to do everything that you can. I
Right.
think, especially after what we've been through the last couple of years, just being able to be together in the same space and celebrate all things education and technology, it is going to be amazing.
Absolutely. And just being able to connect in person with, like-minded individuals is going to be really great too. So for both of you, are there any ed tech tools or companies that you've really connected with recently, say in like the past year that either you're looking for either seeing at the conference or, Dean for you?
I I am so excited about seeing so many people and so many
Mm-hmm.
different companies. So I know I have been using Flipgrid for years, and so I have been interacting. I'm a fan of Anne, especially, and I'm like all the Flipgrid team, but I am
Yeah.
just going to be starstruck when I actually get to meet those people in real life. But that goes for everybody. For Simbalu, G, I'm actually going to be working with Canva for Education, our Canva for Education booth at ISTE as well, and so being able to see the Canva people and being able to see all of the teachers, it's just going to be a really great time.
Definitely.
And of course, all things technology, I'm looking forward to it all too. So I tend to learn about different platforms, tech platforms that can be utilized for all these different purposes. And so it's always an opportunity for me to learn from whoever, and looking for those innovative and creative solutions to, what we do in classroom every day. So I'm looking forward to everything.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you both think that this year's ISTE will differ from the last ISTE? Dean, I know you mentioned that you went in 2018, and John, you went to a conference this year. And so I would just love to, hear your guys' opinions. Maybe do you think there'll be any COVID protocols? Do you think people will be more cautious? Do you think we'll see like a decrease in attendees? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm gonna I guess answer that hopefully very honestly. At
Mm-hmm.
FETC this year, I know that things seemed different. There were a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
less people in attendance to FETC than there were in previous years, and I would be inclined to believe that that might be similar at ISTE. However, I also believe that people are looking for educators are just looking for connections, right? Even more so than they perhaps have prior to COVID. So while attendance might drop some, I almost think there's a hunger, there's a desire to kind of be around people in a physical sense, and so um, I think it's sort of a twofold experience will happen at ISTE this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree. And I just think, if you look at where we're at just right now with the economy and with COVID still going on, I think we're probably going to see less than we would have had in the past. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that the people who are going to be able to go are going to be so excited to do so. But I also know, it's a process to be able to go to ISTE as well. And so
Yeah.
I think that there's going to be some impacts, but I'm kind of excited to see how everybody has kind of changed or evolved over the last couple of years, because we're all different than when we were the last time we came
True.
together at ISTE. So
Mhm.
it'll be different, but should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've all kind of seen stories about turnover among educators and, burnout, especially through the pandemic. First off, have you both been feeling, within the last 2 years with all the change going on?
I think my primary answer is overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to rely on why I started doing this in the first place, and that keeps me going. And I understand what the challenges are, and I embrace them. But the truth is, it's been exhausting. Like I've really had to constantly kind of say to myself, okay, I know why I'm doing this. I have to keep going because I know, I know that those students, I know that there's still learning that can happen still. And so I push myself probably a lot more than I would have had to in the past, just because
Mm-hmm.
of how hard it has been to consistently maintain motivation with all of the challenges that existed. Now, I still love teaching by all means,
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that didn't kill my passion, but at the same time, it required a little bit more effort and me pushing myself to keep doing it, considering everything that we kind of had to, all the changes, the flexibility, the things that were added to our plates these past 2 years that were not there prior to that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I've been working in instructional technology for 4 or 5 years now. Before that, I was in a classroom for students with autism. And I remember my former boss used to tell me when I first started the educational technology position, she said, "Don't worry, there's no such thing as an educational technology emergency." And then the pandemic hit, and we were like,
Mm,
oh, we have to take those words back. And so, since the start of the pandemic, I have been fortunate enough to work with educators around the country in support roles and helping my school district transition. And it has been very interesting to see the evolution of thought, but that also comes with a lot of burnout on my end as well. I think
right.
everybody in education, we have to work either multiple jobs or do what we have to kind of make ends meet. And so, and especially dealing with all of the external things, whether it's political or social or economical,
Hmm.
it just makes it so hard. And I think the teachers who are still in education, who are working with kids who are dealing with all of this stuff, are so strong and are so just to keep persevering. But I'm also very proud to see so many teachers acknowledge that I do feel this way, and this is not normal, and we should try to make the world a better place to where teaching is sustainable and where, we can do this as one career and still have our own mental and physical health along with it. So I don't know that we've reached an answer to that in education, but I think when I see teachers myself, everybody's so tired. So
Of
tired.
course. Yeah. And you kind of mentioned something that makes a lot of sense. And I think just not just in education, but across the board, and other industries. I think we're also seeing just like support from our fellow coworkers, our fellow peers, because everybody is just kind of, we're in a daze now. It almost feels like we're 2 years into this, and although we are burnt out, we're also overwhelmed and not sure, like, what do we do now? Almost, we're not really seeing an end in sight, and so it almost feels nice that we all kind of feel the same way, but at the same time, it's we're kind of at the point like, okay, so but what now?
Yeah, we're all kind of, depressed and poor
Yeah,
together. So
exactly. So with that, do you think that we will see a new generation of educators?
I personally hope so.
Hmm.
And I say this, I try to tell the teachers that I work with, because this is my philosophy, is when we're working with students, are we preparing that? Are we teaching them based on our past or our students' present and future? And I know that you cannot make a statement about all teachers because we're all different. But I do think that we are going to see an influx of hopefully maybe some younger, new teachers with some new
Hmm.
ideas and some new, not afraid to step out on a limb, not afraid to try new approaches or try new things in the classroom. I think that we sometimes pigeonhole ourselves into this box when it comes to teaching, that we have to do this curriculum, we have to do this pacing guide, and we need to follow these theories, when the reality is that we are in 2022 and
Hmm.
the world that we are living in today is probably nothing compared to what people thought it was going to be. There are
Right.
so many trials, so many tribulations that our students have to deal with. So I think that we all, as a collective, need to really put on our scientist cap and think about what's best for the students. How do we navigate this new normal? And I think having some newer teachers with some new ideas, new approaches to incorporate that, I think that would be a good thing, because I think we're going to get in a situation where we have a lot of teachers retiring, and do we have
Hmm.
those teachers to replace them, and what is that going to look like? So I hope that we see a lot of new educators at ISTE. Please come to ISTE if you're not already. If you're a new educator, come on, because we want to build that passion around technology and pedagogy and doing what's best for our students.
Hmm.
I would add that the be to adapt and
Hmm.
evolve is so important too. I believe that this whole experience has really changed the ball game, or changed everything. There's a lot of things that I believe are going to have to be different because of our experience. And that's everybody, the teachers, the students. I mean, everybody that's involved with education. We don't necessarily look at education the same way. And I think our perspective has shifted as a result of what we've experienced. And so while, I believe that there will be that influx of new teachers that will come in with that kind of get their game face on.
Yeah.
uh, but I also believe that there will be teachers that have maybe are teaching right now that will inadvertently evolve and adapt to meet the needs of students, perhaps in a way that they've never had to do before, carrying out that whole legacy of why we teach or why we started this teaching thing in the first place.
Definitely. And you mentioned something that was interesting. You said about needing to adapt. And both my parents work in education, and they've had for almost 30 years. And especially through the pandemic, they were talk about this new influx of educators that were coming in, and how they would maybe would only last a few months. And it's interesting that you said they needed to adapt, because that is very true. Of course, when you're just out of school and you start your first job in education, it is extremely different than any job. It's nothing as to what you had expected. And I can imagine even more so now, while we're deep into this pandemic, especially how it's affected all the students and things like that. So I think that is what you said, Dean, makes a lot of sense.
If I could just add one more thing
Mm-hmm.
there, I know I'm not the same. I think about how this year started, this school year. I changed this school year, and I think for the better, not without change, but I think I have changed this year. Looking back, I figured out ways to navigate the obstacles regardless of the obstacles. So just to throw that in there.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but for you both, how has being an educator changed in the last couple of years?
Oh my gosh. It's been very odd, because especially when the pandemic happened, as horrible as the pandemic is, and wouldn't wish it on anybody, there was a silver lining in that. I thought that maybe this would be this massive push that we need to make education more equitable, more accessible, more inclusive, because we all had to shift at the same time. What better way to try something new? But as I started working with educators and working throughout the last 2 years with this situation, it wasn't the ideal situation because nobody was prepared. And I see so many, I've seen so many educators that I've worked with who are like, oh, the pandemic is about to be over, or we're getting to the end of it and we can go back to normal. And there are pros and cons to everything. Is online learning perfect for everybody? Absolutely not. But is in-person learning perfect for everybody? Absolutely not. And if we can find a way to better use blended learning strategies and actually use technology to make our lives a little easier, to make our students' lives a little easier, and to make our connection more real. Our students, whether we like it or not, they have lived in a world with technology their whole life. And so if we let them or take away their access to their phones, or if we don't allow them to explore technology in our spaces, we are creating a divide where it says technology is only for fun when you get out of class and when you can go to social media, and it's not for professional productivity. And that's a wrong message to send to anybody. So I think that we have this duty to really show and lead by example and say, yes, you can use technology, but it's also for academic and for business. And we have to be intentional and build those digital citizenship strategies. And so it's one of the things we're going to see what plays out in the future. We're still stuck in the pandemic. So once everything gets, I guess, really back to normal, if it ever does, we'll see what sticks. But I've definitely seen both ways. I've seen teachers who did not use technology before the pandemic, and now they are being ed tech superstars. And then I've seen teachers who use technology during the pandemic, and because of whatever situations, kind of abandon it now that things are getting face to face and a little bit back to normal. And I just encourage everybody to look at what your students needs, look at what your instruction needs, and if you can build in those strategies, incorporate more engagement and technology, go for it, because that reflects our students' lives.
Absolutely.
Definitely agree. I believe, and I may be a little devil's advocate in me, but and this is actually not necessarily a bad thing either, but I don't believe it's ever going to go back to what we perceived as normal. I do not believe that we're going to ever go back to what we have seen in previous years. Now, to me, that's not a bad thing. To me, that could be potentially the greatest thing ever, because now we're sort of almost forced or coerced into figuring out ways, like John said, to meet our students where they are. And quite frankly, I've always believed that that was what we should be doing as teachers anyway. And how has teaching changed? Well, I mean, I don't think we're just teachers. I mean, there was a time, where we were teachers, right? And maybe a few other things, but I feel like we're so much more than teachers today. Just because of all of the challenges and things that our students bring with them. Today's education world is not the same. And so how do we effectively deliver content when there's so many other things that we probably want to deal with or, handle prior to the actual teaching of students, right? We learned about Abraham Maslow, and those needs are very important. And so definitely I've seen myself for sure take on a whole lot more in terms of hats than
Mhm.
that I've never had to do before.
And what I want to say one thing that I've noticed, and I've seen it with all of that, the people that I connect with, the classes that I taught. This was at the university level, but I've seen it in K through 12 as well. The engagement, it's an issue. The attendance, it's an issue. And no matter how much we're going to gripe about it or talk to students about it, I follow so many young professionals, young students, or younger generations on social media platforms, and I am always amazed at how vocal students can be when they're passionate about something. And this
Oh
generation of
yeah.
students, I think they know what they want. They know they've seen a different way of doing things, and they get confused as, this worked well for us. Why can't we have it both ways? Why do we adapt?
Hmm.
Why do we have to go back to the old ways? And I truly believe, especially this last year, teachers were trying to fight that. No, we're going to go back to normal. We've got to be in class. We have to do these things. And it still really didn't change the students' behavior that much. And so eventually we're going to have to change, because I think that the students are going to hold us accountable. And I think that's an okay thing, because we're there for
Yeah.
the students. We're there to make however they need to learn. That's what we need to be doing. And so if they are advocating for themselves, we need to listen.
I definitely agree. And I think I'm a millennial and growing up in the 90s and 2000s, and thinking about education back then and how it was so cut and dry. Now, I know one of you mentioned because of the pandemic, we were kind of thrown into this new way of living and we had to adapt. And we were almost operating on this like just automatic, like autopilot almost, especially with education. And using textbooks that were so old. And are we even learning things that are relevant, or does this still even make sense? And even just going to high school, and you just have to get into college and not even thinking about our careers or what we actually wanted to do in life. And so I think
Absolutely.
I agree with both of you. As because of the pandemic, we did have to shift things, but in a very good way, because now this new generation of students, they're able to learn in a different way that we never got the option to. And I'm sure I could have learned much better, or learned. I was terrible at math. I'm sure there are different ways that they teach now that I maybe could have understood better. So I definitely agree with you both on that.
Well, and I think, I don't know, I'm 33. I was born in '88. I think I'm still considered a millennial, so I think I'm right
Hmm.
there with you. But my experience in school, it was incredibly difficult for me to go to college, because I was having to support myself. And so I used
Hmm.
to work overnights at the gas station, and then bike back to campus, and then go to classes. And face-to-face classes for somebody who has to put a roof over their head and food in their stomach does not work the best, for
Hmm.
at least in my experience. And so, especially in 2022, when there are so many students who are working jobs to support themselves, who do have scholarships that they have to go after, have other things that they have to do outside of education, we can't just ignore that anymore, because,
Right.
like you're talking about, the order of needs, they're going to work so they can put a roof over their head. And so if I can give them a Flipgrid response instead of a written discussion board, that they
Hmm.
can give me their comprehension skills when they're on a break at work, why can't I do that?
Right.
Why?
Right.
We need to be cognizant that the students in our classrooms, they are having to work. They have lives that are incredibly different than probably their professors lived. And
Hmm.
so we have to understand that students come in all shapes, sizes, colors, ethnicities, background. And if we want education to be truly accessible and equitable, then we need to make sure that we're building in those accommodations for all students. And one way to do that is to create that blended learning space where you can show your students, yeah, we've got this kind of workaround. We can do this for you. Because when we try to fit everybody in one box, it does never,
Hmm.
ever works.
Right. Right. Hmm.
So that begs the question, what constitutes learning, right?
Hmm.
Because I truly believe that learning happens in all shapes and forms. It does not take on one specific path. And I've definitely evaluated that this year. And I thought about, well, how do I present this in a way so that everybody learns, and everybody sort of gets a chance to do that in the way that makes sense to them. So yes, great dialogue right here about learning and how that has to be flexible for students, especially now.
Yes. And I'll add one last thing. I love that this new generation is kind of throwing college out the window. We're having careers where we don't need a college degree. And I love that. And I think growing up, as a millennial, that was the only option. And if you didn't have a college degree, you weren't going to have a future. And so now this new generation is coming in and they're doing these different, more creative jobs that we didn't even think about before. And I love that educators like you who really understand the students and understand exactly what they want to do with their lives. Because for me, if I would have had educators like growing up, I would have been more excited about my future. And I think that's super important to have.
And I love that you say that too, because, I graduated high school in 2006. And I actually came out when I was in high school, probably around 2003. And that was a scary time to be
Yeah.
LGBTQ. Nobody was out, and my parents were worried for my safety, but I just had to live my truth. And I cannot tell you, when I go out and or if it's on social media on TikTok, and I'm listening to these kids' stories and I'm looking at the advocacy and I'm looking
Yes.
at these students calling out bigotry and internalized racism, and they're calling out all of these different things that for generations have been swept under the rug as being okay. And it's not always perfect, but the fact that these students have enough confidence and autonomy in saying, this is not okay for anybody, this doesn't work for me, we can different, we have to do better. It's for the first time I do feel hopeful for our society,
Oh yeah,
because we
absolutely.
have some amazing leaders that are just waiting for that opportunity. And if any of them are listening to this, like, you keep being your authentic self, and you
Hmm.
keep, caring for one another no matter what life throws at you. Because I look back at these advocates and these people, and it just brings a tear to my eye, because the world is such a different place now, and it feels a little bit better to be your own authentic self in 2022. We still have a long way to go, but a
Hmm.
lot of that is just due to the love and the just intense advocacy that these students have, and their passion for changing the world. And I think so. Go
Oh,
change the
I
world. You
agree.
got
I
it.
agree. So, just one last question so we can kind of wrap up. A more hard question. So I know you both participated in a virtual ETK. So are you both excited to see or attend our in-person ETK event?
So I was like, I've been so obviously, yes, I definitely but then I'm like, I don't even know how any of this works. Like, what do I do? Like, and so I've got a song that I would love to be able to sing for everybody, and I may or may not have arranged for some backup dancers from some
Oh,
people
I
who are like,
love
we want
it.
to get on stage too. But I just think it is going to be so powerful to go to the House of Blues and just sing in a space with all of these ed tech people and have fun and just live life. It is going to be epic.
It is. And Dean, I wish you were coming to see it in person.
Well, let me just say the jury is still out on that, because anything could
Okay.
happen between now and the end of June, even spontaneously. So who knows what might happen between now and then. But I will tell you, I did ETK in 2018
Hmm.
in San Antonio, and it was everything that you've just described. Um, I don't remember the name of the building that we were in, but something about the educator kind of support is different, I think, than any other kind of support you might
Hmm.
receive. I don't know. We just do it better. But anyway, there was so much energy in the room, and obviously you had people you knew, people you didn't know, people you knew by the end of the night, because everybody was interacting with you, and it was literally what made that whole experience what it was. It was so much fun. And just the love and support was just amazing. So if you do participate, you're going to love it. And if I happen to show up spontaneously at the last minute,
Hmm.
then who knows what may happen in New Orleans.
I love it. I'm very excited as well. This is also my first EdTech karaoke, so I am just as excited as both of you. Um, but I want to thank you both so much for joining this discussion with me. I really enjoyed what we talked about, and I think we had very like-minded thoughts, and yeah, I just really enjoyed our discussion. So thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us and holding the space. It's been an honor.
Yes, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So Dean, I hope that we see you at ISTE, and John, we will see you at ISTE. But for now, we will see you guys on Twitter, on social media. But I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Thank you so much. It was good seeing you, Dean.
Likewise, take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.